Hey there, monkeys. Grab that cup of coffee, kick back, and relax. We'll get started with a sit rep in just a minute. All right. Hey, good morning, folks. Mil-Spec Opsmic here. It's going to be your sit rep. It's 11/27/2023. And we're going to talk about the latest stuff going on in Ukraine with Russia. We're going to talk about Israel. We're going to talk a little bit about the moves that are being made here by Flashbang and why we ought to just keep an eye on it, just because the general nature of it all. But nonetheless, let's get into the deets over here on the mini board. As always, kicking it off in Skyglass, sitting at around 142, but I've already stripped out over 100 and some change, actually about 120 trainers right out of the middle of all of this. So that will clear up the skies. And if we get into the numbers after that, let's see. Got a lot of helo trainers up too. We could probably strip those out. And then let me see. Yeah, let's just do this. Let's go through and look at the air refuelers that are up. And then that'll give us an indicator on what our worries are over the United States, because we tend to service those areas. So notice you've got them off the East Coast. Those are going to be your Pegasus B767-200. That is kind of the latest and greatest in terms of the air refuelers that are being made and manufactured these days. The KC-135s, wow, I'm only showing one here now. If I go over to Europe, we probably have a couple over there too. Yeah, we do. We've got one that looks to be kind of to the north of the northern side of Germany, close to Berlin. We drop down a little further. We've got one out over the Adriatic. And that also is a U.S. military asset. That's it. So let's take those away. As we strip them out, you can see Europe is still quite busy given the time of day over there. It is pretty late, but still very active. Notice the amount of stuff flying out here in this general neck of the woods. Black Sea, we don't see these very often. There's a Eurofighter that is currently up. Little E3 Sentry in the same area, and NA, and don't know who that belongs to. Let's see if we got any other intel on it. I do not, but you can see C-17s are still pretty active in the general area. Little German Air Force Glex looks to be headed into Israel. Actually looks to be landing in Israel. It's on the descent. See the red there. And then this one looks like a Turkey or a Turkish aircraft also headed down. Looks to be headed into Egypt. But back over here to CONUS, which stands for Continental U.S. And you can see where we are. A lot of C-130s, a lot of little BE Beach aircraft up. Couple R-135s. If we actually peel that onion back a little further, you can see quite a few E-3 Sentries. Those are going to be your advanced early warning systems for any type of attack against the United States, as well as, they handle air traffic control. They can do man in the middle. Very, very advanced electronic suite. And they've got new ones coming online. That's a little 737 platform that has that surf skeg. We already see Australia flying those quite a bit. So let's do this. Let's get into the details. We're going to start off in the watch list. Just notice that's a drone. The other day I said that was a survey aircraft. That is not. That one is a drone. You can see it is an unmanned drone, and not that they make manned drones anyway, but nonetheless, yeah, that's where we are. Got a couple another. There's the E3 Sentry. We're just looking at that. This is pretty live, actually. And you can see one that is down over Spain. And then we get over to the United States. We do have quite a few survey flights up. They are still continuing on. I would say we're in excess of 40,000 survey flights for the year, which is probably 1,000x what they normally would be. It's just insane. And then, of course, you can just see the stuff going on over Texas. Some of that is a mix of Border Patrol and survey flights. And October is when the season begins for survey flights. There are, especially in the Northeast, when the leaves start to kind of dump off of the trees, it gives that LiDAR a better, more precise image. And then let's see. I got a little NOAA over Florida, more Customs and Border Patrol. And then let's get into the intel side. I've changed the colors because they're very hard to see because it's not much. This is over the last 5 days since the last time we checked in and actually looked at the flight history. Very, very light, which is very odd and strange to me. It typically is significantly more. But then if you get over here to Europe, you can see it is still quite very busy and active around Kaliningrad. Notice they're getting a very good look as you head north into Russia there over in the east. There's a reason for that. We'll talk about that here in the news here shortly. But yeah, from an intel perspective, and then of course you see Israel is just covered up over Gaza as they go through the ceasefire and they look for the missing folks that have been taken hostage. Then let's look at the AWACS. Again, tells a story, advanced early warning, man in the middle. When you see the perfect round circle, that is more than likely man in the middle. They become the cell tower in the sky using both Dirtbox, Stingray, and whatever other technology is actually out there. And then and just notice the locations. It's over, you've got it actually all the way up to the border of Ukraine there in Poland. And then here in the United States, just notice the sweep back and forth. It kind of heads from center of the United States out over towards Nevada. What's strange is I'm not seeing any activity down south towards that southern border side of California. Other than this, you see the broken traces there? Those are TACAMO aircraft, right? Take charge, move out. It's U.S. Navy asset that is talking to the nukes on subs, ICBMs, etc. Just notice coast to coast, very active and busy. These are the ones that you got to keep your eye on because when they are airborne, depending on the location, it kind of gives you an indicator where the subs are located too. All right. Now, R-135 is a little different story. It's not crazy busy. Notice taking off out of Okinawa. That's in Asia. And I'm using the reverse color still on the map because it is easier to see, at least just from this standpoint of these traces, because there's not a lot of them. Notice off of Israel. Again, same stuff. Now, let's talk C-17s because this does tell a story. I do have some shipborne data that I'm going to be pulling in once I get it figured out. But someone has been so kind to give me a bunch of information that I've got to dig in. It's actually one of the banana knots, and they're just amazing. And so so we're going to dig in and figure out because that will really tell a bigger story beyond what we were just looking at here in terms of the aircraft taking off and landing. Notice it's a lot of the port locations, right? Notice it's also out of the middle of North Carolina. And then also that one out of Bermuda I thought was interesting. You know, dropping something off, bringing something out. I don't know. But again, spaghetti strings into Europe, heavy into the UK, heavy into Germany. And then the broken traces, right? Notice that one's into Poland. All right. It looked like RZE Poland, which looks like we've been giving them a little bit more stuff to shoot. I imagine they're about running dry on everything else. You can see the broken traces. Those broken traces are a big indicator that they're hiding where they're going. Now, notice the flurry that goes in and out right here. That spot, that location, that's Egypt. That's south of Gaza. That's not heading into Gaza with helping the Israelis. They're landing in Egypt. And notice where they're running in and out of. They're going back and forth to other locations within the Middle East, which tells me there's more than humanitarian aid here. More than likely, they are taking people from Gaza, bringing them into the UAE, into Qatar, and into Kuwait, right? Okay, that is going to kind of bring us around to the news cycle here today. We get over first, we're talking flashbang. He is on the move this week. It's important to note where he is going because he's headed to Atlanta and then he's headed to Denver. Now, what are in those locations? We'll talk about that here in just a second. But here is, you can see the TFRs. Here's the Atlanta TFR. You know, not the first time he's gone there, but it's important to note that he's headed into Atlanta and then he's headed up here into Denver and off to the side here in Denver. And then this one down in Pueblo, Colorado. All right. Then, and I'm sure they've got an excuse why they're going, but we need to pay attention because these are locations that are kind of key to us. This is Bob Marley headed into Houston. All right. And if you haven't figured out and you're new to watching the channel, flashbang, that is code word for Biden. We give him that name because he is disoriented, doesn't know where he is. And if you're familiar with the flashbang device, what they do when they breach a room is they throw one of these flashbangs into the room and it disorients everybody in the room. And your ears are ringing, you can't see because of the flash, and you just don't know where you are, thus the name flashbang. Bob Marley, because she is from Jamaica, and she likes to smoke weed in the White House. So yeah, you know, that's why she cackles and why she always has the munchies. So nonetheless, that is where they get their name. So if you've been trying to figure out why does he call them this, that is why. I mean, no disrespect for the device of the flashbang, nor do I have any disrespect for Bob Marley, nor the Wailers. Okay. So, all right. So let's get away from the Jamaican. And again, looks like Houston, Atlanta, Denver, and Pueblo this week is where they're heading. And we back away. And today, really not too much on there other than he gets his regular briefing. Now, why are those locations important? Well, you might ask, this is out of sequence. Let me move this over. We'll get back to that. This is why it is interesting. You got the Denver Federal Center. Now you go, well, what is that? Well, that is like where all of our data is mined. It's also where they supposedly have the deep state located and their operations. So, but the Denver Federal Center in Lakewood, Colorado, which is just outside of Denver, it's to the east of Denver, okay? 6,200 employee agencies from, or of agencies from the federal government of the United States. The center encompasses about 670 acres, 90 buildings, 4 million square feet of office, warehouse, lab, and special use space. There are different federal agencies on this site, and they include, the U.S. Department of Interior, the Bureau, or BLM, the Bureau of Reclamation. I don't know what that's all about. United States GS. So, and then the General Services Administration. Of course, they also have the National Ice Core Laboratory. So there's a lot of things that are there. But my understanding is that it also has a giant processor center. So all of our data gets pulled into one of these locations. I'm not sure where that is exactly, but that's what I'm told. So nonetheless, I do know there is one there in that general area that is very large and massive. Now, the other piece, Atlanta. What is in Atlanta? Well, that would be FEMA Region 4. And within the Region 4, if you're not familiar with what that is, the United States government has taken all of the FEMA locations and they roll them into these major regions, right? So you have 10 regions, I believe it is, across the United States. And this particular one has a responsibility for Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. I am in Region 6. But this is a big roll-up. So that means they put one person or two people really in charge of the region. And the people they have in charge here is this gentleman and this lady. We all know her. She's as crooked as a politician comes. And yeah, that right there is that's a concern for anybody living in FEMA Region 4, that she's the acting deputy for that. But that's a big risk. So you've got, it looks like, him heading over to where the major region for FEMA, okay? And then the other piece is you've got him headed into where our big data centers are. So connected, I don't know, but it is just a data point because we have to stay on our toes. You never know. Anytime these guys are on the move, you know, you got to look at it, peel the onion. I don't think it's just about the campaign trail, honestly. All right. Now, check this out. If you have not heard this, I'm going to mute my mic. I want you to hear what this lady says. This is a confirmation that our government is indeed watching all of us, okay? And so this is over on Instagram, and I think this is the governor for the great state of New York. And let's see what she has to say.
Social media platforms. And we have launched an effort to be able to counter some of the negativity and reach out to people when we see hate speech being spoken about on online platforms. Our media analysis, our social media analysis unit has ramped up its monitoring of sites to catch incitement to violence, direct threats to others. And all this is in response to our desire, our strong commitment to ensure that not only do New Yorkers be safe, but they also feel safe. So we're very focused on the data we're collecting from surveillance efforts.
All right. Now, you heard what she just said. Very focused on the efforts that are being collected from surveillance efforts, right? And they go into social media, et cetera. This goes to show you that the government around the United States are not even hiding it anymore. They are watching us and everything we do. It is, I believe, probably a violation of our rights, given what they do, because they do come after people when they find these things. So nonetheless, this is tied to the social media platforms, but don't lose sight that even the Tube and all the others have AI that monitors all of this stuff. And it's not just inside the networks, but you also have it over your head. If you start looking, as we talk about these intelligence balloons and everything that's up over us, the fact of the matter is they too are collecting data on all of us, all right? And then they process it, and then they start to look for threats. And all it takes, I'll give you a perfect example. You may have heard Fox News just talked about the fact that the U.S. Marshal Service, if you were in attendance or in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, the U.S. Marshal Service put air marshals on the flights of those individuals, and they've been following them around. So if you travel a lot and you were in the general area, there was a guy that was in the area for a funeral. He is now on the list for terrorist watch list. So he goes through all kinds of extra checks and measures as he is traveling through the airport. So if you were in Washington, D.C., whether you were at the event or not, you were on the watch list. Let that sink in. These folks are very much acting like the Gestapo. And this will go as far as we allow it to go, right? We, the people, have got to start letting our voices be heard. The problem is with this is that you can't get this genie back in the bottle. Ever since 9/11, the Patriot Act, it basically was slippery slope. And that's when they started to push out these policies and surveillance of U.S. citizens. And so that's the reason why you have Five Eyes, right? And you have other countries inside the United States that are doing surveillance, and then they can do it, but we cannot, right? So when I show you The British flight that's down in Southern California flying around, right? The R-135. And we go, well, what are the Brits doing here? Yeah, that's how they get around all of this. It's loopholes in the law, or they just flat out break the law because they set the law and they're not going to hold anybody else accountable other than us. Okay, so let that sink in. But that right there is your smoking gun. If you live in New York, just know that they are all over the social networks, watching and monitoring, so that you don't say anything bad about people like Hamas or the LGBTQ community. All right, moving on. Now this one, pay close attention to this, and the reason I say that is because this is how the last thing started. Okay, mysterious pneumonia ripping through Chinese schools sparks fears among scientists of a repeat of the Big C. Okay. This becomes important because when you start to see it here, somehow, some way, it just starts to go around the world. Think about Spanish flu, all right? And this right here could end up being the next thing that gets us. Pneumonia is nothing to fool around with. It will kill you in a heartbeat. And if you've got any type of health issues prior to having something like that, yeah, it'll kill you. All right, let's move on. This, I think, is an important data point for us as we look at what's been going on in Ukraine and Russia. And I say that because here, Austin visits Kiev to signal U.S. support as battles rage. This is, he just visited over the weekend, but there was a large amount of strikes between Russia and Kiev over the weekend. Check this out. We get into some of the details here. Russian drones hit Kiev in a massive UAV assault on the capital since the start of the war. It's actually the most massive. Sorry, I left that one out. And so it's interesting that you can see some of the pictures of these drones. I think some of those are Iranian drones, but that's the first piece of it. But then Kiev hits back. So Russia says it down dozens of Ukrainian drones headed for Moscow following the mass strike on Kiev. So we get over here to this side of it, and you can see on the map as we look up here above my head, all of the red little icons you see with the launchers on them, those are basically air defense. That's Russian air defense, and that's them taking out the drones that are coming into Russia. You can see lit up like a Christmas tree. The aircraft you see at the top there around the drones, those are the airports basically suspending flights. All right, that's what was going on there. Now, the interesting thing, and I don't think my map shows it yet, it goes off from there. The areas that were earlier where they told folks you're going to have to basically evacuate the area because huge danger. Russia's about to just put in massive strikes into the area in the region. So they were telling all of the people to leave the villages. Well, nothing ever happened in any of those villages. In fact, a lot of the bombing stopped. So it kind of went counter to what they were saying was going to happen, which is really, really strange. And the focus has shifted. Okay, now let's get back over here to our mini. Let's get into some of the other aspects here. The U.S. Navy secures Israeli-owned oil tanker that has been seized. The latest incident basically happened over the weekend, and the interesting thing when it comes to that is that it was, again, the Houthis out of Yemen that were trying to take over this ship. It was a chemical tanker, which is really interesting, but they are saying, let's see what it had on board of this tanker. It was, let me get to the point. It had the name of the chemical, which is kind of an interesting deal. You know, oh, here we go. Phosphoric acid. So anyway, this thing was a huge cargo container carrying a boatload of that. All right. So it's a chemical one. That right there can be used for chemical attacks. That's not good. But nonetheless, it looks like they intercepted and took the ship back. But again, this is it's pretty bad of what the Houthis have been doing out of Yemen, and I do believe we will start to see some attacks or some strikes against them because they keep poking constantly into Israel and into or against ships out in the Red Sea, etc. All right. Now, check this out. Israeli strikes put Damascus airport out of service again. Remember, Isaiah 17 says that one day we're going to wake up and Damascus will be no more. We've talked about the fact that you have Hezbollah to the north, very, very dominant and prominent in that general area near Damascus. And you have a lot of Iranians there. And so that is a very big threat. In fact, I had read something that talked about a convoy being taken out. We saw, and we talked about this C-130 gunship that was taking out some ground targets. My understanding was it was a supposed mismarked UN convoy that had Iranian missiles on it that was taken out by the C-130. So they were basically painted up to be UN, and they were bringing them into Syria, more than likely headed towards Damascus. So again, eyes on this, because this will potentially turn into Isaiah 17. All right, let's do this. We talked about Ukraine. Let's take a quick look before we transition out of the Israeli piece. I just want to show you the things that are going on. The silver star, or the silver stars, the stars you see within Israel are basically the IDF going and arresting and having some type of an encounter within the West Bank. You see down at the orange and reds down at the bottom, straight directly across from me, that is going to be Gaza. Even though there is a ceasefire underway, there are still a lot of efforts and a lot of things going on around the area, especially in the West Bank. Notice you see onesie-twosies up to the north, which is interesting because Hezbollah has been trying to bait, just like Ukraine. When you see Ukraine firing shots into Moscow, they are trying to antagonize Russia into a bigger war, because if they do so, then all of a sudden U.S. and NATO will have to take action, and that means they'll get more stuff that they need to continue the fight. So we'll look closer at the base here in a minute, but again, RZE Poland doesn't look like it's getting a lot of support. Neither does Israel, for that matter. I see a lot of flights going into Egypt, but I don't see a lot of stuff headed into Tel Aviv or Haifa. Okay. Now, this one, pay attention to. Russia moves its doomsday missile even closer to Europe. About a year ago, it had made a big move. This thing is massive, by the way. Look at this. Look at the amount of wheels and stuff on this mover. This is called the doomsday missile. And the interesting thing is, if you note the top speed here, Mach 30. Now, I did a calculation of that, and that comes to about 23,000 miles an hour, if you're wondering what Mach 30 is. And it says here also that, meanwhile, Russia also plans to test the world's largest ballistic missile, known as the Satan II, in the Arctic region. So we'll look as we get over to our NOTAMs and see where these things are headed. But these are very, very large. They say that because it's even closer to Europe, that it can strike London or even Berlin in a matter of minutes. All right. And you're not talking 18, which is about what it would take, probably a little less than that, 15 to get to the U.S. You're talking probably 5 or 6 minutes, less than 10 tops. All right. Okay, this is going to be your NOTAMs for today. Just note everything looks to be like we just discussed. You got flashbang on the move. We got the normal suspects, a little bit of slop. And let me back it up and see if we've got any indication of a missile launch. Yeah, we do right here. That looks like that's going to be a missile box coming out of Russia. This is Russia right here. All right, over to Biggs Army Airfield. Not too much on the board. We do have one Atlas Air headed up to Indianapolis. That's probably has people on it, not necessarily any kind of cargo, being a 767-300. On over to Dover, nothing there. One camper coming out, headed to RZE Poland. And then we get over here to NATO, nothing on the board right now. They just landed. We had a couple up. We look at Ramstein. Just note that there's the Atlas Air coming in from Baltimore, Washington. That's probably troops. One Reach. and I'm not seeing anything else catches my eye. We move on over to RZ Poland. One aircraft looks to be leaving. Let's see on the arrival board. One camber flight from Dover, 747. Probably some more artillery, if I had to guess. And it looks like that was a Coletta bird headed outbound from there. I see a couple Brits on the board here. There's one. I do see a NATO coming in and out. That's probably because Austin was over there, right? Secretary Austin. All right, Camber Flight 1 coming from Frankfurt, headed to Doha. So coming out of Germany, headed to the Middle East. And then we jumped over here to this side. I see one national cargo coming out of JFK to Anchorage, Alaska. And that looks to be probably going to pick up some more cargo. The Brits are very active in Europe as well as the Middle East. You can see look to be headed down pretty deep into near the Gulf of Oman. And then this Western Global coming out of Hong Kong to Anchorage, Alaska. And then last up, we're going to just look very briefly at the Immigrant Machine. Looks to be headed southbound from border towns, and then to the north, looks like they are headed out of central U.S. to Chicago. Let me just double check that. No, sorry, scratch that. Reverse it, Chicago to Wichita, Kansas. All right, so, all right. Well, listen, that's going to do it for Sit Rep today. Hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. We will see you on Wednesday for the next Sit Rep. Stay frosty. Keep that powder dry. We'll talk soon. God bless. Monkey out. Thanks for watching, folks. You can check out the latest gear and products by selecting the QR code on your screen now or go to monkeyworksus.com.